Adventures in Teaching Kids with Entitled Parents. When I was in my early 20s, I got a job teaching high school at a private institution. This school is one of the most elite and expensive in my country. I'm talking full-on 1%ers here. I was so happy I got the job. The pay was incredible for a teacher, triple of what I was making at my previous job with amazing benefits. What I failed to realize is that the incredible salary came with incredibly entitled parents and kids. I lasted a whole semester before I had to get the hell out for my mental health. To this day, I still have PTSD just thinking about the possibility of teaching high school again. Here's a couple of the best stories. I asked the kids to write an essay. I always check for plagiarism. I had a couple of cases of kids just lifting the entire essay off the internet. I immediately failed them in the assignment and talked to them explaining why they can't do this and how this will affect their future grades and even their future career. Next day, after classes were done, one of the kids' dads slammed my classroom door open and bolted straight at me as I was sitting on my desk. He was full-on screaming, frothing at the mouth and everything. "How dare you fail my son? You failed him for no reason." I remained very calm and invited him to sit down. "I will have you fired," he screamed back. I very calmly opened up one of my desk's drawers and produced documents. I said as peacefully as I could muster, "This is your son's essay. This other paper I printed from the internet. They are identical. If I report this to the principal, your child could be expelled." The guy stopped on his tracks, paused, looked at the papers for a second or two, and changing his tone completely, meekly asked, "Is there anything my son can do to make it up?" I replied that his son had failed this assignment, and that he'd have to adjust better during the rest of the semester. But if he ever did anything like it again, I'd go directly to the principal. Joe's shoulders slumped, and he walked away. Now you might be asking yourself what happened with the other kid that also turned in a downloaded paper. Well, the story also involves an entitled parent. Surprise, surprise. The day after the screaming dad, the other mom calls me over the phone. Of course, she also starts screaming at me. How dare I fail her son, etc. As soon as she let me get a word in edgewise, I told her the same thing I told screaming dad. Her son had turned in a paper that was lifted from the net. Without a beat, she replies, "It's not lifted entirely from the internet. I should know I wrote it myself." I immediately face-palmed. "So you admit that your son did not write the paper, that you wrote it for him?" Realizing what she'd admitted to, she tried to form coherent words for a minute or two, and then just hung up. Her son still failed the assignment. I have so many other stories, including entitled kids. My favorite entitled kid story is one student, an 11th grader, who came up to me at the tail end of the semester almost crying. This is a kid who didn't do any work during the semester, so he was scraping by with a D in the course. He sits next to my desk and says, "Teacher, is there anything we can do to raise my grade to a C? If I get a C, my parents will buy me a new car. If I get a D, they'll just buy me a used car." Future entitled parent in the making. I haven't taught high school since then. I moved on to a different field immediately afterwards. I made a career in advertising, which has been fantastic. I came back to teaching a decade or so ago, but now I teach college part-time, sort of a hobby really, because I truly love teaching. The main difference is that now I don't have to deal with entitled parents. Well, except one, but that's another story for another time. Thanks for the rewards and the comments. Just because I've been asked a number of times, these are not the only things that happened in my short stint at that school. These are merely a couple of stories regarding entitled parents. In my experience, there was a nightmare. I was very young and had to go through situations I truthfully wasn't prepared to. And I wasn't the only one. There were 5 new teachers at the school that year. Only one lasted more than 1 semester. Years later, I had the daughter of one of those teachers as my student as a college freshman. She told me her dad, who quit mid-semester, had to go to therapy afterwards. I confessed that I did too. It was a perfect storm of entitled parents, entitled students, pressure from the school administration, and the fact that it was an all-boys school, so I, at 20, was teaching kids that were 3 or 4 years younger than me, so they had little respect for me as a teacher, and I didn't have the experience to deal with it. Today, with a decade and a half of teaching experience, it would have been a completely different experience.
Karen demands my time slot because her son needs something to do after school. There's an update to the story that happened yesterday. Here's the link. This happened a couple of days ago, and I thought you guys would enjoy it. As a bit of backstory, I play the electric guitar. I take lessons from a teacher that is absolutely the best in the area at what he does. He's been doing it for about 30 years now, so he's really, really good. Understandably, he's also really, really booked up. When COVID hit and everyone started doing online classes for school, he lost a bunch of students because they'd typically go to his class after school. And since they weren't in school or doing extracurricular activities, their parents, I guess, decided to yank them from guitar lessons too. One of the things that makes my teacher awesome is that he tends to give scheduling priority to his older students, like me, 41, because they don't give him the headache of having to manage every little thing between this and that thing for school. It kind of sucks for parents, but he's had enough of the headaches of rearranging everyone's life, because little Johnny has to play his leading role of being a rock in the school play. Now this matters because now that kids are starting to go back into the classrooms where I live, parents are blowing up his phone trying to schedule their little darlings back into lessons, while us older folks have been dutifully attending, or doing online lessons and paying the whole time. So if you've been doing that all this time and you've got the 3:30 slot and you like it, that's where you stay. This matters because of Guitar Karen. Guitar Karen's son used to take lessons, but she pulled him out for the last 9 months or so. And school classes are starting up, and Guitar Karen wants as little to do with her kid as possible, so she has apparently enrolled him in every possible after-school activity that exists. I know this because my teacher rolls his eyes as our lesson is about to begin because his phone is pinging like crazy. I thought it might be an emergency or something, so when he returned to the room, I said, "Your phone has been going crazy." He normally turns it off during our session, and he just mutters something and turns it off, talking about how this woman has signed her kid up for track, baseball, art, band, and now guitar. And in order to ensure he has something to do every single day of the week, he absolutely must have this for a clock slot. You can imagine where this is going. Guess whose slot that is? Mine. I'm super flexible with regard to the days of the week, just not the time of day, because I work until then. I told him as much, but he's like, "No, I'm not moving you, don't worry." He turns off his phone, and we continue on our lesson. Within like 5 minutes, his computer is going ping, 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 and he's like, "Holy mother of fuck," and shuts the lid. Blissful silence for the remainder of our lesson, until he opens the classroom door and there stands Guitar Karen, a kind of heavy-set woman with her lips pursed like she's gonna give you a kiss, and her brow looking like it has permanently stuck itself in the scowl position and a Mama Bear t-shirt on, I shit you not. She yells at me. Now, I've never seen this lady in my life, but she's got no mask on, so my instinctive reaction is to social distance my ass right the hell away from her. She just Godzilla stomps her way in, knocking over a music stand and sending papers everywhere. She turns and shouts at the teacher. "Why won't you give my son this time spot? He needs it. You need to reschedule your other students and stop singling me out because my son has other activities." The poor guy can't get a word in edgewise. She's standing in the doorway, so I can't leave. She looks me up and down, me, who's very much a t-shirt and jeans kind of lady and is wearing a shirt that says, "I like heavy metal, coffee, cats, and maybe 3 people," and is like, "I bet you don't even have a job. You're probably some washed-out college dropout. Why'd you pick this time slot anyway? Is it because you knew someone like me might need it? You need to give it to my son." Also can't say a damn word because this woman just won't shut up. Now let me reiterate that my teacher is the chillest guy on the planet, but he nearly died last year from sepsis on top of the whole COVID thing, so he's really understandably pissed when someone gets in your face and is stabbing your chest with their long-nailed finger and spraying insults without a mask on. He gets between me and her and says, "You need to back up or get out." They take their confrontation out into the hallway. He tells me to go ahead and leave and he'd handle her. I hear him tell this lady, "Listen, love, Spain has been with me for years, and I'd better never hear you insult her or any of my other students ever again. Your behavior is disgusting, and you need to leave the premises now before I call security. We don't have security in the building, but she doesn't need to know that." He was so fired up, I think he could have landed her flat on her ass in that moment. She turns completely meek and is like, "What about lessons for my son?" And at this point the teacher was like, "Absolutely not." And she's like, "But he needs this." And the teacher said, "Not my problem," and acted as if he were dialing security on his phone. She scuttled out of there as I was leaving the parking lot. I wanted to give my teacher the biggest high five. He later told me he didn't hear from her since then, But he thinks this isn't the last encounter. Imagine she's the type of person that will come down there every weekday at that time to berate whichever poor student has that spot because her son obviously needs it.
Check out my other superb videos.